Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something warm, golden, and sweet. No, not a spa treatment. We're heading to a medieval abbey where the nuns have just rung the evening bell, the kind that echoes softly through stone corridors and dew-damp courtyards. You can almost hear it, low, slow, and reverberating like the heartbeat of the place. Outside, the twilight fog hugs the orchard walls, and inside, the scent of fresh bread sneaks out from under a thick wooden door. This might sound cozy now, but let's be clear. You probably wouldn't survive long here. The year is somewhere in the late 12th century. Plumbing is a fantasy, and your only entertainment tonight will be a Latin psalm, or maybe a minor bread-related miracle. But before you give up and dive back under the covers, remember, there's honey bread involved. And not just any bread. This recipe, passed down by nuns who whispered secrets into their loaves like edible prayers, is worth every cloistered hour. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the outer gate of the Abbey of St. Matilda, somewhere in a forgotten valley where the forest has crept up right to the monastery walls. Ivy clings to stone like an old friend, and moss blankets everything horizontal. A sleepy donkey blinks at you from the pasture, chewing in slow motion. You take a breath, and the air smells of thyme and chimney smoke. A wooden door creaks open, as if by ghostly invitation, and you step into the cloister just as the vesper bell begins to toll. It's not loud, just persistent. A sound that sinks into your bones and tells you, here, time is different. Here, time walks barefoot. Through a narrow hallway lit by rush lamps, you follow the faint sounds of whispering sandals and distant singing. You pass an arched chapel doorway where candlelight spills across the floor in liquid gold. A tiny wooden sign, charmingly crooked, reads Panis Angelicus. You don't know Latin, but it feels right. Beyond that, the scent wraps around you like a thick, toasty shawl. Fresh bread, warm honey, maybe a hint of butter, although good luck proving they had any. You follow your nose like a cartoon character, drifting toward a heavy door that thuds gently when you knock. No answer. You try again. A pause. Then, the door opens just a crack, and there she is. Sister Alwina, barely 5 feet tall, arms like bread paddles, cheeks flushed with oven heat, and flour dusting her habit like snowfall. Her face is creased with age and cheer. She gives you a look that's half suspicion, half maternal sigh, and waves you in. The room you step into is not so much a kitchen as a living bread poem. Rough-hewn counters, baskets of herbs drying above, and a hearth large enough to roast a bear, though thankfully tonight it's just baking bread. An iron peel leans against the stone oven, and the scent, the scent, is a symphony of warm grain, melting honey, and just the faintest note of smoke. Sister Alwina doesn't ask questions. She just hands you a linen apron and nods toward a clay basin filled with water. Wash your hands. You're not just a guest. You're about to be an apprentice. Quiet hands, curious eyes, she mutters, like it's a motto or maybe just a warning. As you scrub under your nails with a twig brush, because medieval hygiene was not optional even in a monastery, you spot a basket filled with round loaves. Each one is stamped with a faint cross or curling symbol like a medieval emoji. They're stacked like holy offerings on a wooden rack. You kind of want to eat one right now. Sister Alwina seems to read your thoughts. No snacking before prayer, she chides. But maybe after. She takes you to the corner where an oil lamp flickers beside a pile of parchment scraps. Recipes, drawings, even one with a doodle of a bee holding a crucifix. This is where you'll start. No stand mixers, no digital timers, and definitely no Instagram posts. Just flour, honey, thyme, and a little faith. As she shows you the tools of the trade, wooden spoons worn smooth from decades of mixing, dough troughs big enough to hide in, and a jar of mysterious golden powder, she tells you stories of how nuns believed baking bread was a sacred act, of how they'd whisper psalms while kneading, hoping the dough would rise more purely if sung to. Historians still argue whether the abbey's honey bread was a result of necessity or indulgence. Sugar was rare, but bees were holy. Either way, the recipe stuck around. And here's a quirky detail. Some convents kept bread bees trained, or so the nuns believed, to visit only certain herbs so the honey would taste like lavender or sage. Sister Alwina seems to think this is entirely possible. You lean against a bench, taking it all in as the bell tolls again, this time softer, almost sleepy. It's going to be a long night. But hey, at least it smells like heaven in here. You're still in the warm heart of the convent bakery, apron tied haphazardly, and hands still damp from your first medieval hand-washing. The fire crackles in the belly of the hearth, throwing slow shadows across the flour-dusted floor. It feels timeless here, like the clock stopped centuries ago, and nobody bothered to notice. Sister Alwina stands in front of you, holding something that looks suspiciously like a wooden sword, but turns out to be a long-handled spoon. She gives you a nod that could mean you're ready, or please don't ruin this for everyone. Then she starts talking. Quietly at first, as if speaking too loudly might wake the yeast. You learn that Sister Alwina has been baking here for 40 years. She's the last of the sisters who trained under Sister Petronilla, who herself learned under a French nun rumoured to have baked for a papal feast in Avignon. It's basically the sourdough starter of oral tradition. Bread is more than food, she says, looking into the bowl like it might offer divine guidance. It's memory. You need what you've lived. You don't argue. You're too busy trying to figure out how to stand without knocking anything over. Sister Alwina beckons you to follow her through a narrow archway behind the ovens. It's cooler here, and the air smells of dry herbs, beeswax, and something like crushed grain. You pass a shelf full of stone jars labelled in faded ink. Far, Hordeum, Triticum. You have no idea what any of them mean, but they sound impressively Latin. She stops before a low wooden bin covered in linen. She lifts the cloth like a magician and reveals flour so fine it could be snow. It catches the lamplight like gold dust. She sinks her hand in and lifts a fistful. It trickles through her fingers like a very slow hourglass. This, she says, is milled with patience and arm strength. Turns out the abbey still mills its own grain. Corn and spelt, the ancient wheats that most modern loaves wouldn't even recognise in a lineup. You're about to ask how when she leads you outside into the twilight, where the stone path crunches softly underfoot. At the edge of the herb garden, tucked behind a fig tree, sits a quernstone. Two massive discs of stone, one atop the other, with a wooden handle poking out like an awkward limb. It looks more like a medieval torture device than a kitchen tool. You are naturally invited to try it. You grip the handle and begin to turn. The top stone grinds slowly over the bottom one, crushing the soaked grain you pour into the central hole. It is, in a word, exhausting. In 5 minutes you're sweating. In 10 you're wondering if your arm will ever work again. Sister Alwina watches with a faint smile and a full lack of sympathy. Quirky detail of the night. Some convents employed what they called a mill nun, whose job was not only grinding flour but also praying with every rotation. Imagine rosary beads clinking against a grain bin, multitasking at its holiest. You glance around and see the garden stretching out in neat rows, sage, marigold, rosemary, and a patch of something minty that smells divine even from here. A small bell attached to a beehive tinkles in the breeze, and you realise even the insects here seem to be on some divine schedule. Historians still argue whether monasteries adopted grain cultivation to support self-sufficiency or as a clever way to assert their power over surrounding farmland. The answer, as always, is yes. You carry a sack of your freshly milled flour, your arms trembling like overcooked noodles, back into the bakery. Sister Alwina checks the texture with 2 fingers and a slightly disapproving nod. "We'll sift it again," she says, as if you might have introduced chaos into the cosmos. Inside, the light has dimmed. Candles flicker, casting a glow on the arched ceiling. The fire murmurs in the hearth. Somewhere in the distance, a nun sings the Compline hymn, her voice soft and slow, rising like steam in the cold air. You take a seat on a low stool and stare at your flour. You've never respected a bag of carbs this much in your life. As if on cue, a young novice arrives with a pot of something warm, goat's milk infused with lemon balm and a hint of cloves. You sip it slowly, surprised at how comforting it is. Sister Alwina tells you it helps quiet the spirit before kneading. Also, it helps the elderly nuns sleep through the rooster's pre-dawn bragging. Priorities. Suddenly, the task ahead seems more serious than just mixing a few ingredients. This isn't a recipe, it's a ritual. You feel it in the way your fingers still itch from the grindstone. You hear it in the silent rhythm of the abbey. You smell it in the air, thick with ancient intention and warm flower. As Sister Alwina begins arranging the ingredients on a wooden board, honey glistening in a clay pot, spices lined up like holy relics, you know tomorrow you'll be sore, sleepy, and full of questions. But tonight, you're about to begin baking something sacred. You're back in the kitchen, warm again after the cool walk to the mill and the herb garden. Your arms are still grumbling about the quernstone ordeal, but you've got a new appreciation for flour now. Real flour, not the ghost white stuff in plastic bags from your modern life. This flour has soul. It came from earth and stone, filtered through centuries and elbow grease. Sister Alwina lays it all out on the work table like a tiny medieval cooking show. A clay bowl of your hand-ground flour, a small crock of wild yeast starter, bubbling ever so slightly like it knows something you don't. And most importantly, the star of the show, the honey. She removes the wax seal from the honey pot with reverence, the way some people might handle royal documents or their last piece of chocolate. The honey glows amber in the lamplight, thick and slow. One whiff, and you're somewhere else entirely, a summer meadow maybe, or a hayloft where bees gossip in the rafters. This came from our herb garden hives, she explains, mostly thyme, lavender and wild fennel. She dips a finger and lets you taste. It's floral, rich, and a little spicy, as if it's been infused with stories. You wonder how much of the garden has made its way into this batch, how many sisters whispered prayers near the blossoms, how many herbs shaped the nectar without anyone noticing. Honey wasn't just a sweetener back then. It was medicine, preservative, and occasionally accidental bribe. Some abbeys used it to barter with travelling pilgrims or butter up visiting bishops. And in times of plague, it was mixed with vinegar and garlic to make what they called Four Thieves Tonic, a name that sounds more like a fantasy novel than something you'd willingly drink. Historians still argue whether the nuns learned beekeeping from Roman manuals or picked it up from wandering monks with suspiciously bee-shaped hoods. Either way, they became excellent apiarists, often naming their hives after saints. One sister once claimed her bees refused to sting anyone who had confessed that week. Coincidence? You decide. With the honey center stage, Sister Alwina begins combining ingredients. First, the flour, then a generous spoon of that bubbling sourdough starter, called leaven here, or sometimes blessed lump, which is both adorable and slightly unsettling. She adds water, lukewarm from a kettle resting near the hearth. Then comes the honey. It oozes into the mix like golden lava, catching the candlelight and trailing in long, sticky threads. You're handed a wooden spoon and motion forward. You stir. Slowly at first, then with more conviction. It's heavy work, stickier than any cookie dough you've known, but it feels good, honest, like stirring purpose into a bowl. Keep turning, Alwina murmurs, like a prayer, round and round. Soon your arms are back to complaining, but your mind, strangely calm. After a few minutes, she adds in salt, just a pinch, and gives you a nod that says, "That'll do." Then come the spices. You are not ready for the spices. She opens a wooden drawer and pulls out tiny packets wrapped in cloth, tied with twine and labelled in scrawled, slightly fanatical handwriting. One by one, she opens them and lets you smell. Cinnamon, warm and sweet. Clove, sharp like memory. Black pepper, just enough to tickle the back of your nose. Imported from the East, she says. Sometimes, other times, gifts. You glance sideways. Gifts? Her eyes twinkle. Monks come bearing strange things. Some say from Jerusalem, others from a tavern 2 towns over. We don't ask. Quirky tidbit alert. Some nuns were known for sneaking extra spice into baked goods, believing it helped the bread speak more sweetly to God. Whether God appreciated it is unclear, but the resulting loaves were apparently popular enough to inspire knockoffs in neighbouring abbeys. You sprinkle in a modest blend of cinnamon and clove, and the dough suddenly smells like a holiday you've never celebrated but desperately want to. As you work it in, the kitchen goes quiet except for the occasional pop from the firewood and the soft thump of your spoon against the bowl. This dough won't be rushed. It wants to be slow, to absorb every scent, every grain, every thought you've accidentally dropped into the bowl while stirring, and you let it. Sister Alwina takes over for the kneading. She does it differently than you'd expect, more like cradling than pummeling. Her movements are circular, hypnotic. She talks softly while she works, telling you how every batch is a bit different. Some rise tall and proud, others slouch like lazy saints. You can't make it behave, she says. You just guide it along. And now you're starting to understand. This bread is not about control. It's about listening to your hands, the dough, the room, the silence. She shapes it into a round and lays it in a flowered bowl, covering it with cloth. We'll let it dream, she says, and you feel a little pang watching it settle, as if it's fallen asleep after a long story. You both sit down at the table, hands sticky and faces warm from the fire. The bowl sits between you, rising slowly, like a secret breathing under a blanket. There's no ticking clock here, no timer, just a sense, a hum in the air, and maybe, just maybe, the faintest scent of something holy baking its way into the evening. You wake the next morning, not in your bed, but still seated at the wooden table, your cheek pressed against your arm, and the faint imprint of the flour-dusted linen cloth somehow etched into your skin. The fire has settled into warm coals, and pale morning light spills in through the narrow kitchen windows, catching flecks of dust mid-dance. The dough? It has risen, and not just a little, it's puffed up like it dreamt of being a cloud and nearly succeeded. Sister Alwina stands over it with a look of approval so faint it's practically a whisper. It lives, she says, and you get the feeling that's as close to a compliment as you'll ever get from her. Before anything else, she hands you a cup of weak ale. It's not even 6 a.m., but this is medieval hydration, and besides, she says it soothes the soul and wakes the needing hand. It tastes like herbal bread soup, but you pretend to enjoy it. She appreciates the effort. Now comes the part that separates the sleepy visitors from the serious bakers, shaping the dough and preparing the oven. She pulls a bundle of fabric from the shelf and reveals several iron pans and a few wooden paddles. One of them is shaped like a small shovel and bears deep burn marks. You wonder what exactly she tried to bake with it. She doesn't say. You plop the dough onto the floured table and it deflates with a gentle sigh. Like it too wasn't ready for the day. You're instructed to gently stretch, fold, and roll it into a round again. No punching. This isn't a street fight. It's a sleepy hug for sticky dreams. You shape 3 loaves. Sister Alwina nods once and moves toward the oven. It sits like an ancient dragon in the corner, bricked in and soot-blackened, its open mouth revealing smouldering embers. The heat pulses outward in gentle waves, warming your knees. She tosses in a handful of flour and it bursts into smoke. This, apparently, is the medieval version of checking the temperature. Here's your quirky tidbit. Medieval ovens didn't have thermostats. Shocker. So bakers would throw in a parchment scrap or a cabbage leaf and count how quickly it charred. If it caught fire immediately, too hot. Smouldered gently, perfect. Burst into flame and summoned a minor demon, probably worth waiting. Historians still argue whether the ovens were fueled entirely by wood, or if dried cow dung was sometimes added for heat efficiency. Sister Alwina claims only heretics bake with manure, so, let's stick with logs. You and Alwina take turns with the peel, a long flat paddle with a handle far too short for your liking. She loads one loaf, expertly sliding it into the oven's mouth with a gentle twist of the wrist. You try next. You hesitate. The fire glares at you. She raises an eyebrow. You slide your loaf in, awkwardly, with a little too much force, and it lands with a thump that nearly sends it sideways. Too bold, she says, but she smirks, so you figure you'll survive. With the loaves in, there's nothing to do but wait. So, she shows you the stamps. These aren't your ordinary cookie cutters. They're carved wood, ivory, and even one made of smooth bronze. Some bear crosses, some flowers, others cryptic sigils that look like they could double as treasure maps. One in particular catches your eye, a 6-petaled flower inside a circle surrounded by what looks like runic lettering. St. Bridget's seal, she says, for spring loaves. You ask if you can stamp one. She lets you, but only after a solemn try not to ruin it. You press the stamp gently into the warm dough and lift it to reveal a delicate symbol, somewhere between sacred art and artisanal branding. It's beautiful. Bread for the body, she murmurs, and symbol for the soul. It's not just decorative. In a world where most couldn't read or write, these marks told stories, who baked the bread, which saint had honoured, even the day of the week. Some loaves bore tiny notches to signify charity bread, meant for the poor or sick. Others were baked only for feast days or vigil fasts. The oven breathes steadily. You sit by the hearth with a bowl of lavender water to clean your hands, and Sister Alwina picks up a prayer book, handwritten, with soft curling letters. She reads aloud softly enough that the bread might overhear but not be embarrassed. Somewhere nearby, another bell tolls. The 9th hour. Time for turning the loaves. This is where the peel becomes a sword again. You reach in, trying not to breathe in the hot soot, and nudge the loaf a quarter turn. It resists just slightly, but then gives in with a soft scrape. The underside is already darkening, the scent rising rich and honey-sweet. And then it happens. The first crack. A soft split along the top of one loaf, like it's smiling at you. The honey inside has started to caramelize, darkening to a toffee shade. The crust browns gently, the scent deepens, and for a moment you forget everything else. It's just you, the loaf, and a fire that feels older than language. Quirky fact. Some nuns believed that a loaf that cracked just right during baking meant your prayers had been received. One that stayed smooth and dense. Either your dough was overworked, or your conscience was. You don't dare ask what Alwina thinks of yours. After nearly an hour, she pulls the first loaf from the oven. It glows, genuinely glows, like a golden halo trapped in flour and crust. The others follow, each with a slightly different shape, a different split, a different stamp. Together they look like a family of sleepy angels just emerging from a warm underground nap. You carry one to the window and crack it open slightly. Steam rises. The scent hits you like a lullaby. Honey, spice, grain, and something else. Something sacred. You've made bread. Not just any bread. Their bread. And it's only morning. You'd think after baking holy loaves that literally steamed with divine scent, your task would be over. But no. Sister Alwina wipes her hands on her apron, gestures for you to follow, and disappears through another narrow door without a word. You're beginning to suspect she has secret tunnels under this abbey, or at least a firm belief that rest is for monks. You step outside into the herb garden again, only now the sun has climbed just high enough to sparkle through the dew. The air's full of scent. Thyme, mint, lemon balm, and something vaguely peppery you can't identify. Bees hum lazily between blossoms, like they've also had a strong sip of morning ale. Alwina leads you to a series of low wooden racks, set up like mini sun decks. On each one lie bundles of herbs tied with string, lavender, sage, angelica, rue. She picks one up and hands it to you. "Hang this," she says, pointing to a line strung between two beams. You obey, the bundle crinkling softly in your hands, and just like that, you're inducted into the Abbey's other great alchemy, the art of drying herbs. These herbs will be used for everything: medicine, cooking, ink making, and occasionally stuffing into pillows to ward off nightmares. Some even get added to the honey bread dough in tiny mystical pinches. Sister Alwina leans close and whispers, mint for clarity, lavender for devotion, angelica for the stubborn. You wonder if that last one's for your benefit. Historians still argue whether the monastic herbal knowledge came from classical Roman texts, or was developed through sheer trial and error in cloistered gardens. Likely both. What's known is that nuns like these became master herbalists, writing manuals that mix practical advice with slightly unhinged saintly anecdotes. You pass a novice carrying a basket of fresh comfrey leaves, followed by a very fat cat who seems to be the real head of the herb department. The cat pauses, sniffs your bread-stamped hand and trots off, officially blessed, perhaps. Back at the drying racks, you're shown how to test when herbs are ready. Not by date or time, but by texture. If it crumbles like parchment and smells like memory, Alwina says, you've done it right. The nuns use a mortar and pestle so old the stone bowl has worn smooth like a river rock. You grind lavender into dust that coats your fingers. You sneeze. She laughs. First sneeze, you're forgiven. Second, you're possessed. This place is half sanctuary, half sitcom. You ask what else they add to the bread. She leads you to a low shelf with small stoppered bottles. Essences, she explains. Extracts of mint, caraway, and something called wormwood cordial, which you're politely not invited to try. For special occasions, she says with a smile that tells you the occasion is likely never. And then she does something curious. She pulls out a folded square of parchment stiff and browned with age. She opens it slowly the way you'd open a letter from someone you once loved and lost. Inside, drawn with careful lines and faded ink, is a diagram of a honey bread loaf. Around it, handwritten notes, swirly Latin phrases, and tiny symbols, moons, flowers, stars. It's Sister Clement's blend, Alwina says. She died in 1247, but we still follow her ratios, mostly. Quirky tidbit. Some convents treated their original bread recipes like sacred relics, locked in chests guarded by codes, or in this case hidden inside herb books so curious monks wouldn't steal them. Sister Alwina gently folds the parchment back, kisses the corner and returns it to the shelf. Then she turns to you. You ready to grind spices? You say yes and immediately regret it. Turns out grinding cloves by hand is one of Dante's lesser-known circles of penance. The smell is delicious, sure, warm, sharp, holiday, but your fingers start to go numb. Your arms, already sore from the quernstone, now officially hate you. You switch hands, doesn't help. Still, something meditative happens. Clove by clove, your mind begins to wander. You think of the bees, the bread, the cracked crust that looked like it was smiling. You wonder what else these nuns know. How many secrets are hidden in mortar bowls? How many prayers were whispered into loaves eaten and long forgotten? Sister Alwina eventually relieves you of your grinding duties with a quiet mercy. She scoops the crushed clove into a ceramic bowl and adds a pinch to a dough resting nearby. Not today's loaves, she says. Tomorrow's. You look at the dough and realise it's already begun to rise. Here, nothing sits still. You return to the table, where your earlier loaves are now cool enough to handle. She cuts a slice from the first and hands it to you. No fanfare, just soft crust and golden interior, still warm at the centre. You bite in. Oh, it's good. It's not sweet like a modern pastry. It's deep. The honey lingers, the spice whispers, and the flour, your flour, has a nuttiness that tastes like effort and earth. You chew slowly. You feel full and peaceful and, dare you say it, a little enchanted. You'll bake another batch tonight, Sister Alwina says, as if you weren't still chewing the first slice. And maybe sleep in between. The light shifts, the herbs sway gently in the breeze. Somewhere another novice rings a small bell and a flock of birds lifts off from the orchard like a soft exhale. You glance at your hands, flowery, sticky, smelling of lavender and clove. And you smile. The day creeps into evening with hardly a notice. One moment you're hanging lavender bundles and dodging bees. The next, long shadows stretch across the cloister garden, and the stone walls begin to glow with that golden, syrupy hue that only medieval sunsets seem to master. The bread you baked this morning, your very first medieval loaf, is now part of supper. You find yourself standing at the threshold of the refectory, a long, echoing hall lit by flickering tallow candles and the last bits of sunlight slicing through narrow stained glass windows. The smell that greets you is unexpectedly serene. Broth, parsnips, something vaguely fishy, and, yes, honey bread. The aroma wraps around your senses like a soft blanket. No one talks. Sister Alwina places a firm hand on your shoulder before you step inside. We eat in silence, listen more than you chew. The room is long and narrow, with a central aisle and rows of wooden benches lining either side. The sisters file in like quiet ghosts, each with her own wooden bowl and spoon. You're shown to a seat at the end. Guess privilege or exile? You can't be sure. A young novice, Sister Bruna, with quick hands and an impish grin she's desperately trying to suppress, places a thick slice of your bread in front of you. It's been warmed gently, brushed with fresh honey, and paired with a spoonful of quince paste. You try not to drool audibly. You glance up to see the reader for tonight's meal step to the pulpit, an elderly nun with a voice like parchment folding. She opens a well-worn book and begins reading slowly, rhythmically. Psalms? Yes. But between the lines, there's something else. A story about St. Agnes and her miraculous hair, which allegedly grew 3 feet overnight to preserve her modesty. You blink. That escalated quickly. You eat. The bread melts in your mouth. Soft, sweet, gently spiced. The honey gloss on top adds a delicate crunch, and the quince paste hums in the background like a fruity tambourine. You chew slowly, trying to pace yourself, but each bite wants to be the next. You try to focus on the reading, but honestly, this bread is louder than scripture. Quirky tidbit: some convents had strict chewing codes. You were meant to bite exactly 8 times per mouthful before swallowing. Apparently chewing too little led to gluttony, and too much was a form of vanity. You're pretty sure you're somewhere in the vain glutton hybrid category. The sisters finish their modest portions, no seconds, no chatting. One nod from the abbess and the bowls are gathered. The benches creak as everyone rises, and the silence dissolves back into the cool air of the hallway. Just like that, dinner is over. But you linger. Sister Alwina eventually finds you back in the bakery, sitting near the oven, nibbling the last corner of your slice like it's a relic. The loaf is gone, she says. You're allowed to smile. You do, and that's when it happens. A soft clatter in the hallway, the squeak of old hinges, a flicker of candlelight beyond the kitchen door. 2 nuns step inside, their sandals whispering across the flagstone. One of them you recognise, Sister Bruna, the mischievous novice. The other is older, with ink-stained fingers and a faint smirk that screams retired rule-bender. They don't say a word, just nod at you and approach the hearth. From beneath their cloaks they produce a small iron pot and a folded cloth bundle. "Midnight posset," the older one whispers, and Sister Bruna nods. Apparently bedtime beverages are a thing here. The pot is filled with warm milk steeped with rosemary and a pinch of nutmeg. They stir in a spoonful of ale, just enough to hint at rebellion, and a drizzle of honey. While it warms, Sister Bruna sneaks a second loaf from the cooling rack. "For sharing," she says with a wink. You do not report her. You all sit on low stools near the oven, cloaked in firelight and soft laughter, sipping the sweet, sleepy posset and tearing off pieces of bread to dip into the thickened brew. Historians still argue whether posset was a cure-all drink or just medieval comfort food. Some recipes included vinegar, egg yolk, or even breadcrumbs to bulk it up. Others, like this one, kept it simple, creamy, and deeply snooze-inducing. The older nun, Sister Gertrude, tells you a quiet story about a time she accidentally added mustard seed instead of cinnamon. The abbot coughed for 5 minutes straight, she says, but declared it a sign from God and asked for more. You laugh. Carefully. You're still a guest. The warmth of the drink, the soft crinkle of crust, the glow of the fire, all of it begins to lull you. The 2 sisters eventually slip away, melting back into the quiet folds of the abbey. You remain by the hearth, alone with your thoughts, and a stomach full of sacred carbs. Outside, the night deepens. You hear the distant hoot of an owl, the creak of the old fig tree in the garden, the rustle of vines climbing the cloister wall. The abbey feels alive, not just with people, but with layers of time stacked on top of one another like loaves rising in the same bowl. Your eyelids start to droop. Your limbs feel heavier. You lean your head against the warm stones of the hearth and take one final breath. Honey, clove, ash, and dreams. You wake slowly, not to a clanging alarm or the buzz of your phone, but to the soft rustle of sandals, the muted sweep of a broom across stone, and the low murmur of morning prayers drifting through the hallway like incense. It's still dark, but just barely. The kind of pre-dawn where the stars are shyly slipping behind clouds, and everything feels suspended in hushed anticipation. Sister Alwina is already awake. Of course she is. You don't even ask how long she's been up. You just know she probably hasn't slept more than 4 hours in the last 30 years, and somehow still has the strength of a small ox. She greets you with a nod and a cup of something warm. Not posset this time, but a mild broth made from parsnip peelings, sage, and a splash of leftover ale. To warm the fingers, she says. You sip it. It tastes like slightly drunk soup, but it does the job. Today, she tells you, you'll learn to start from the beginning again. New batch, fresh dough, slightly groggier you. You roll up your sleeves, still dusty from yesterday's heroic clove grinding, and head toward the work table. But first, she opens a small cupboard tucked between the shelves of flour sacks. From it, she pulls a clay pot and removes the lid. Inside, bubbling, breathing, slightly sour-smelling starter. The leaven. The same one you used yesterday, but it's grown overnight, fed and lively. It has bubbles along the edges and a faint scent of fermented apples. This leaven is old. Not just yesterday old. Decades. Some of the nuns whisper it's over 100 years old, passed down from sister to sister like a baby made of flour and willpower. Quirky detail. Some monastic communities used to anoint their starters with holy water every feast of St. Honoratus, the patron saint of bakers, just in case the dough needed divine insurance. You stir it gently with a wooden spoon, feeding it with flour and water. Sister Alwina watches, satisfied. Bread lives, she says again. but only if you feed it. As you begin to mix a fresh batch of dough, you realise the rhythm is becoming familiar. Not easier, just expected. A kind of sleepy choreography. Scoop, stir, scrape, sigh. The flour clings to your skin like a second, more honest glove. The honey, again from yesterday's bee-blessed batch, drips slowly into the mix. You recognise the notes now. Thyme, lavender, a whisper of fennel. While the dough rests, you take a walk outside. Not far, just into the orchard, where the early morning mist clings low over the soil like a secret not yet told. The trees are pear and quince, gnarled and crooked like old bones, with mossy patches and birds' nests tucked into their limbs. Somewhere nearby, a rooster announces himself like he's been rehearsing all night. You sit on a stone bench and think about what Sister Alwina said. Bread lives. So does this place. Not in the loud, flickering way cities do, but in its own steady heartbeat. Even the silence here hums with memory. Historians still argue whether monastic bread baking was born out of necessity, charity, or spiritual devotion. The answer, of course, is yes, all of the above. What's clear is that bread became more than sustenance. It became identity, a kind of edible devotion. Back in the bakery, the dough has risen again. It's warm and soft, domed like a cat curled in the sun. You run your hand gently over its surface. Alwina doesn't stop you. She knows now that you're starting to get it. She shows you something new today. A blend of herbs she calls Sunkeeper. It's dried lemon balm, mint, and a touch of crushed marigold petal. Only for spring loaves, she says, or cloudy mornings. She sprinkles a pinch into the dough and works it through with slow, deliberate turns. The scent lifts the mood of the room. You feel more awake. The bread seems to rise a little taller too. As it proofs, she pulls out a long-forgotten box from the pantry shelf. Inside, old wooden stamps, some broken, some faded with use. One has a lamb carved into it, another a sunburst, and one that looks suspiciously like a stylized hedgehog. Feast day designs, she explains, and occasionally jokes. You try the sunburst. Pressing it into the soft top of your loaf, you leave a perfect impression. Clear lines, radiating warmth, like a medieval emoji for hope. The oven is hot now, the coals pushed back, the air inside shimmering with heat. This time, you're more confident. You slide your loaves in without hesitation. No sideways flops, no flour clouds of shame, just smooth, solid placement. While they bake, Alwina invites you to help with a less glamorous task, cleaning out the spice cupboard. You sort through cloth bundles and tiny vials with fading labels. One simply reads, with a doodle of a goose, you don't ask. As you sweep the shelf, you find a folded piece of parchment. Another recipe, but not for bread. This one's titled Elixir for Drowsiness, and it includes hawthorn, bitter orange, and something ominously listed as Sister Benita's laugh dust. You raise an eyebrow. Alwina peeks over your shoulder. That one's not for you. Quirky fact. Some abbeys created tonics so infamous they were banned by bishops for over-exuberance of spirit. Apparently even silence has its limits. By the time the loaves are done, the room is full of steam and scent. The tops are perfectly cracked, revealing golden interiors beneath, and the stamped designs have deepened into the crust. You pull one out carefully and cradle it like it might start speaking Latin at any moment. You let it cool beside the window, where the breeze sneaks in with birdsong and the smell of damp earth. You're tired. Not just sleepy tired. The kind of tired that comes from using your whole self. Your hands, your breath, your thoughts. But it's the good kind. The kind of tired that promises dreams. You sit beside the bread and close your eyes, letting the warmth linger against your skin. And somewhere deep in the convent's kitchen walls, the quiet ticking of old time continues, soft as breath, steady as a heartbeat, waiting for the next loaf to rise. By now you've stopped asking what time it is. The rhythm of bells, dough and dawn has replaced any need for clocks. You wake when the bread calls, sleep when the loaves cool, and measure the hours by the scent of herbs and wood smoke. Tonight you're invited to take on a challenge. Or more accurately, Sister Alwina says, it's your turn with the oven, and you know better than to interpret that as optional. The wood-fired oven looms in the corner, soot dark and faintly hissing like it's dreaming of dragons. It's not just hot, it's alive. You feel its breath when you open the iron door. A gust of dry, ancient heat whooshes past your face, and you swear it speaks in sighs. Alwina shows you the ritual of feeding it. First the logs, dry willow and ash stacked in a precise pattern. Then a slow-burning twist of straw soaked in rosemary oil. She lights it, waits for the flame to dance high, then shuts the door for 10 minutes. Not 15, not 9, 10. Too hot and it burns the crust, she mutters. Too cool and the centre sulks. She teaches you how to read the oven floor, by tossing in a pinch of flour and watching how fast it smokes, or sliding in a scrap of parchment and waiting to see if it curls or combusts. You feel like a medieval sorcerer testing omens in a fire pit. Quirky tidbit. Some abbey ovens were so temperamental that nuns named them. This one's called Matilda, after a sister who once accidentally burned 28 loaves and had to recite psalms while scrubbing the stones for 3 days straight. You keep your distance just in case Matilda remembers. Once the fire is settled, you sweep the coals to the sides with a long-handled brush made of bundled hazel twigs and tied with an old shoelace. A hiss follows every sweep. Smoke curls up in sleepy spirals and slips through the chimney like it's escaping a sermon. Then comes the peel. The paddle is heavier than it looks and far more awkward. You flour it, lift your shaped loaf with 2 steady hands, and place it like a baby bird onto the wooden blade. You hesitate at the mouth of the oven. Alwina nods once. Go. You slide it in. The dough lands soft and solid, right on the hot stone. You back away, blinking through the heat haze. Your face is flushed, your hands shaky, but you did it. You repeat this for 2 more loaves, each time smoother, more confident, less sweaty palmed. And then, nothing to do but wait. You sit near the fire, legs stretched out, arms resting on your knees. The heat is strong but cozy. You feel like bread yourself. Tender, tired, and a little crisp around the edges. To pass the time, Alwina pulls out an old parchment tucked behind a shelf. It's an oven log, literally. A record of every loaf baked here for the past 20 years. Notes in tight, scribbly handwriting, July 6th, sunburst stamp cracked well. Oct 2, burnt bottoms, blame Matilda. You add your own entry. Today's loaves rose stubborn but landed sweet. Peel wielded with moderate dignity. She chuckles and pats your shoulder. You'll do. Historians still argue whether nuns kept detailed baking logs out of piety, practicality, or sheer boredom. Some were mundane. Others doubled as coded chronicles, baking records that included notes on illness, weather, visiting bishops, or who got caught sneaking an extra crust. Imagine trying to decode. Sister betrayed her, absent from kneading, penned in garden, see Psalm 88. The smell in the oven shifts. It's time. You lift the iron door and peek inside. The loaves are golden. One has a small split along the top in the exact shape of a fish. Another sports a perfect stamp, the St. Honorius seal you practiced earlier. The third, a little lopsided, but proud nonetheless. You slide them out one by one, steam rising in soft puffs. The crusts crackle gently in the air. You tap the bottoms, hollow. They're done. You set them on a cloth-covered rack to cool and find yourself grinning like an idiot. These are your loaves, fired in your oven, by your hesitant, floury hands. Alwina doesn't say anything. She doesn't have to. She hands you a small pot of melted honey and a brush. Together you glaze the crusts with a slow, delicate touch, as if tucking them in for a nap. Quirky moment incoming. Sister Bruna strolls by and drops a crumb on the floor, which the convent cat instantly devours. Judges everything, she says, nodding to the cat, but never bakes. You give the cat a little bow. It ignores you, obviously. Later, just before the last bell rings, the sisters gather in the small garden chapel for the final prayers of the day. You carry one of your loaves under your arm, wrapped in linen, still warm. It's to be offered at the altar, not as a relic, not for communion, but as a symbol. The abbess accepts it without a word. She slices it in half and places one piece on the altar, the other back into your hands. Break it with someone, she says, even Matilda if you must. You do. Later that night in the quiet kitchen with Bruna, Alwina and the cat circling your feet like a patient heretic. You tear the bread slowly. Steam rises again. The taste? Just as good as the first time. Maybe better, because now you know the story. And tomorrow, you'll bake again. The next morning arrives on a breeze that smells like lavender and last night's embers. You don't wake up in the kitchen this time. You've earned a cot. It's narrow, lumpy, and stuffed with straw, but somehow it's the best sleep you've had in weeks. Maybe it's the bread coma, maybe it's the convent silence, maybe it's because your dreams were full of honey-slick loaves and saintly bees who talked in Latin. Today, Sister Alwina has a surprise. She leads you back to the bakery, where 3 loaves from yesterday rest on the counter. But something's different. Each has been marked, not just with stamps, but with symbols you haven't seen before. One bears a circle split by a wavy line, another has a tiny fish surrounded by stars, the third is marked with what looks like a teardrop inside a square. These, she explains, are prayer breads. Each symbol matches a verse, a story, or a saint. You blink. So, bread with a message? Exactly. She opens a drawer filled with carved bread stamps, hundreds of them, like a secret language in wood. We don't just bake bread, she says. We mark it, tell stories with it. Feed the body, yes, but also the soul. You pick up one of the stamps. It's tiny, no bigger than a coin, but the carving is delicate, a little boat with a cross as its sail. That's for sailors, she tells you. We send them with loaves when they leave port, to remind them that someone prays for their return. Quirky fact. In some medieval convents, stamping bread was a sacred duty given only to 1 or 2 nuns, usually the ones with the steadiest hands or the deepest prayer lives. One abbey even insisted that stamps be kept in a locked chest, right next to the wine, as both were considered equally holy and dangerous. You're invited to try your hand at it. You choose the starfish stamp. It feels appropriate since you've spent days lost at sea in this flowery world. Alwina nods as you press it into the dough. Not bad, could pass for divine intervention. You're handed another ball of dough, lighter this time, made with less honey and more dried mint. This one's for healing, she says. A sister's been ill. You knead slowly, feeling like your hands are writing an invisible prayer into the mix. The loaf that emerges from the oven an hour later is smaller but fragrant. The crust is dusted with flour in a pattern of concentric rings, and the centre bears a pressed rose petal. Alwina wraps it in linen and places it beside the sister's door. No fanfare, no announcement, just a loaf and a little hope. Historians still argue whether bread symbols were a form of religious propaganda, or simply a way to remember liturgical seasons in a time without Google calendars. Either way, the impact was real. People knew the bread by its mark. A fish meant fast day relief. A sunburst meant feast day joy. A broken circle, mourning. Later you help prepare a special loaf to mark the passing of a former abbess. The dough is darker, made with ground walnuts and black cumin. No honey this time, just a drizzle of elderberry syrup for colour. Bittersweet, Alwina says, like memory. The symbol pressed into this one is shaped like a chalice with rays pouring from it. It bakes into the crust like stained glass, faint but there, glowing at the edges. The nuns carry it quietly into the chapel and leave it on the small stone altar near the candle shrine. No words, just the smell of baked grain, the flicker of wax, and the sound of sandals brushing against the floor. You sit near the back, watching. Even here, bread is language. Back in the bakery, Sister Bruna offers you a slice of another symbolic loaf, this one with fennel and orange zest, marked with an open book. St. Scholastica, she says, for wisdom. Also, she once prayed so hard for rain that it flooded the monastery. Quirky tidbit. Some monastic orders attributed weather changes to specific recipes. Rainy day, blame the walnut rye. Early frost, someone probably overspiced the St. Elmo loaf. You're starting to think this place has its own private meteorology department, run by bakers and occasionally bees. As the afternoon sun hits the stained glass windows, turning the floor into a kaleidoscope, you begin to realise something. This bread is never just bread. It's ritual. It's medicine. It's message. It's memory. You glance down at your floury hands, again, always, and wonder what stories your loaves will tell, long after you're gone, because somewhere, in some distant place, someone might one day taste your bread, breathe in its sweetney. The sun begins to dip again, casting long shadows across the cloister garden. You follow Sister Alwina through the winding stone passageways of the abbey, your arms full of dried herbs wrapped in parchment and tied with twine. She's humming something under her breath, an old hymn probably, though the rhythm is suspiciously similar to the tune you've heard Sister Bruna sing while sweeping. Today's lesson, not bread, not directly, but something just as essential in this place where nothing is wasted and everything has meaning, the herb room. She unlocks a low wooden door near the south wing, and as it swings open, you're hit with a wave of scent that nearly knocks you backward. Lavender, sage, lemon balm, dried rosemary, and... is that vinegar? The room is small, with walls lined in shelves, each one packed with jars, vials, parchment bundles, and ceramic pots labelled in careful script. A small window lets in a triangle of gold light, cutting across dust motes like a painting come to life. This, Alwina says, is where the sisters work their other kind of alchemy. You take a seat on a low stool and she begins sorting herbs into piles, mint for the breath, sage for sore throats, angelica for the nerves. She taps your forehead. You'll want that one. You don't argue. There are dozens of plants here you've never even heard of. Wood betony, costmary, sweet Sicily. Some are for flavour, others for healing. A few, for the more daring sisters, are used to inspire visions. Those, Alwina warns, are stored on the top shelf behind a box of dried plums marked emergency only. Quirky tidbit. In some medieval convents, the herb mistress, called the herbarius, was the most powerful woman in the entire abbey, even more than the abbess. She held the keys to the sick room, the kitchen, and the wine cellar, and sometimes had a reputation for brewing up remedies that could cure headaches, heartbreak, or excessive curiosity. You help grind a few bundles in a heavy marble mortar. The scent fills your nose and clings to your fingers. Lavender dust, crushed thyme, powdered chamomile. You sneeze twice. Alwina, without looking up, says, 3 and you're banished to the goat yard. You slow your breathing. She hands you a jar of pale, golden powder, dried marigold petals ground so fine they shimmer in the light. This, she says, we use in our honey bread sometimes. Just a pinch, for colour, for cheer. She pauses, especially in winter. You bottle the powder and label it carefully in your best imitation of medieval script. The result looks less like marigold and more like margarine, but you're assured no one will eat it unless it smells right. As twilight deepens, a few other sisters arrive, each with baskets of fresh cuttings from the garden. They work quietly, snipping, sorting, tying bundles with string. The room fills with quiet industry and the rustle of dry stems. It feels less like a workspace and more like a sanctuary. A place where the plants are listened to, not just used. One novice, Sister Kalia, sits beside you and begins preparing what she calls a loaf wrap, a cloth soaked in vinegar and rosemary water, used to line the rising bowl to prevent dough from drying out. You raise an eyebrow, she smiles. It also keeps ants out, and nosy monks. Historians still argue whether herbal knowledge in nunneries came primarily through books, or was passed down orally from elder sisters. There's evidence of both. Some abbeys maintained detailed illustrated herbals, while others depended on a strong oral tradition. Whispered instructions, sung recipes, and coded phrases to avoid theological suspicion. Brunner again, shows you a jar labelled Night Quiet. Inside is a mix of dried hops, elderflower, and a sliver of clove. We stuff pillows with it, she says, or put it in shoes of novices who can't stop pacing at night. You smell it. It's soft, earthy, comforting. You wonder if that's what peace smells like in a jar. By the time you leave the herb room, your hair and clothes carry the scent of 10 different plants. You smell like a monastery apothecary. Not unpleasant, just medieval. You return to the kitchen just in time for the bread. Alwina's taken the marigold-laced dough from earlier and shaped it into 3 small rounds. She's pressed each with a stamp of a smiling sun and glazed them with rosemary honey. The loaves bake quickly, smaller size, hotter oven, and come out golden with crisp edges and a soft shimmer from the petal dust. You carry one out to the refectory where a small evening gathering is underway. Not a full meal, just a few sisters enjoying slices of fruit, warm cider, and quiet conversation before Compline. You offer your loaf. They break it with care. One bite, and the room hums with approval. Sister Theodora whispers, "Tastes like a good dream." High praise from a nun who once called honey frivolous. You take your slice and sit near the open window. The sky is deepening into indigo. The last bees have vanished into their hives. The garden is quiet, the oven is dark, but your bread still glows faintly in the candlelight, flecked with gold and rosemary. And in this moment, Sitting among women who know the secrets of herbs, fire, flower, and prayer, you feel exactly where you're meant to be, and feel, without knowing why, that they've just been told a story. The air in the refectory is thick with calm, not the kind of silence you find in empty rooms or forgotten corridors, but a full, living quiet, the kind that sits between sisters like an old friend, wrapped around the clink of spoons and the occasional sigh over a particularly good slice of honey bread. You sit near the end of the long wooden table, watching as each nun receives her portion. The loaves you helped bake, small, sun-stamped, brushed with rosemary glaze, are disappearing in slow, reverent bites. There's no chatter, no clatter, just the rhythmic sounds of eating and breathing, a communion of crumb and intention. Every movement is deliberate, a slice cut with the same care you'd give to turning a page in a sacred text, a sip of cider timed just after a swallow. The sisters aren't rushed, they're tuned. Even Sister Bruna, ever the mischief maker, is perfectly still. You catch her eyes for a moment, just a flash, and she grins. But it's the grin of someone who knows how to play by the rules when the rules matter. A single candle flickers on the central table. No chandeliers, no torches. Just the warm glow of flame reflected in 100 glistening crumbs. Your slice is smaller than usual, but it tastes better than ever. It's sweet, but not indulgent. Spiced, but not loud. You taste the rosemary, the thyme from yesterday's garden work, the marigold powder tucked inside like a smile only you can recognize. And underneath it all you taste memory. One bite feels like the oven's warmth on your cheeks, another like the creak of the herb room door. A third carries the faint scent of beeswax and ink-stained parchment. You chew slowly, counting your bites, not out of piety but because you don't want the moment to end. Quirky detail. Some convents practiced what they called lectio gustus, or taste reading, meditating on each bite of food as if it were a verse. Bread wasn't just food, it was scripture you could savour. Some nuns claimed to receive dreams from the texture of crust alone. Others just appreciated a well-baked loaf. A bell chimes gently in the hallway. The reader for the meal, Sister Felicitas, voice like velvet fog, closes her book with a soft thud. Amen, she murmurs, and the sisters nod once, heads still bowed. Dishes are cleared without a word. One by one, the sisters rise and move quietly toward the side door that leads to the chapel for Compline, the last prayers before bed. You linger. So does Alwina. She sits beside you for a moment, slicing the last quarter of a loaf with a careful hand. She doesn't speak, just offers you a piece. It's the end crust, golden, slightly tougher, caramelized honey around the edges. You take it with a grateful nod. You did well today, she finally says, as though complimenting a job interview instead of a sunbread with herbal undertones. You smile, mouth too full of crust to respond. Outside, the cloister is bathed in moonlight. The vines curl gently around stone archways. Somewhere, water trickles from the lion's head fountain in the courtyard. It's the kind of night where even the shadows seem to hush themselves. Inside, you help with the last of the cleanup. A few stray crumbs, a spot of spilled cider. The cutting board is wiped down, the knife placed in its usual spot, a single piece of cloth wrapped around the blade like a soft shroud. Sister Kalia hums a lullaby while brushing flour from the windowsill. It's old, barely a tune. Something about bees and holy fire, or maybe stars and bread ovens. You can't quite make it out, but it feels like it belongs. Historians still argue whether these quiet rituals, wiping a table 3 times, humming the same tune after supper, lighting the kitchen lamp with leftover baking wax, were superstition or simply deeply ingrained habit. The truth? Probably both, and probably neither. Some sisters claim these routines were ways to anchor the soul to the body. Others just liked the rhythm. Back in the hall, the candle has burned low. Its stub flickers, dances, and finally gives a small sigh as the wax folds inward. Darkness follows, but it doesn't feel empty. It feels complete. You carry the last loaf back to the bakery, one you'll save for tomorrow's early bell. You place it gently on the rack and cover it with a linen cloth, soft, embroidered with tiny bees and vines. Someone took their time making it. Someone knew the cloth matters as much as the crust. As you turn to leave, you pause. In the hush of the kitchen, with its faint sense of spice and ash, the bread on the rack seems to glow in the moonlight, like it's dreaming. like it knows. You don't disturb it. You just close the door, quietly, and step into the hallway. No one speaks. No one needs to. The day has folded into itself like a well-kneaded loaf, and everything is exactly as it should be. It's sometime after midnight when you wake, not with a start, but with a gentle awareness that something is stirring. The moon filters in through a sliver of a window, casting faint silver lines across the stone floor of your little sleeping cell. It's quiet, the kind of quiet that presses on your chest and wraps itself around your ankles. But beneath it, something else. A sound, a whisper of movement. You follow it. Barefoot and drowsy, you pad through the dark corridor, past doors marked with simple crosses and dried bundles of rosemary. The walls hum faintly with age. You turn the corner expecting nothing in particular, and then you smell it. Warm milk. Again. You follow the scent down the familiar passage to the bakery, now lit only by the hearth's soft glow. Two shadows move near the table, small, cloaked, and definitely not asleep. Sister Bruna turns first, unsurprised. Couldn't sleep? Sister Gertrude, older and always a little mischievous, grins from behind a clay pot of warming milk. We thought you might wander back. You nod sheepishly. They're making posset again. A different version this time. Nutmeg, cinnamon, and a pinch of crushed rose petals. For dreaming, Gertrude explains, and keeping our tongues from wagging during matins. They pour 3 cups, hand you a warm slice of bread, left over from earlier, but gently toasted on the hearth's edge, and settle in as though this were the most natural thing in the world. No rules now, no silence, just night and fire and quiet companionship. The loaf tonight is unusual, dense, fragrant with orange peel and a ribbon of ground almond through its heart. St. Lucy's loaf, Bruna whispers, only baked in December, unless someone misses her. They don't say who. You chew slowly. The crust is dark, the crumb rich and comforting. The almond grounds crunch gently under your teeth. You sip the posset. It's sweet and warm, like a lullaby in a cup. Quirky tidbit. Some convents had secret moon kitchens. Not literally hidden rooms, but times when the rules bent. Midnight snacks weren't allowed, unless the bread was blessed, or the weather was stormy, or a sister couldn't sleep without it. There was always a loophole if the loaf was good enough. Historians still argue whether these nocturnal rituals were acts of rebellion, kindness, or simply survival in the long dark hours between prayers. In truth, they were probably all 3. Bruna sets her cup down, watching the embers. Once, she says softly, I dropped a whole jug of honey, right there. She points to a faint stain on the hearthstone. Cried for an hour. Gertrude said it was the Holy Spirit teaching me humility. Gertrude raises her eyebrows. I also said it was a waste of perfectly good honey. They both laugh. You sip. Listen. The fire snaps. A log shifts. Outside, a breeze brushes past the kitchen door. You imagine the herb garden sleeping, bees snug in their hives, even the bread resting on the shelves like content cats. It's in this moment, cradling your mug, licking a smudge of almond from your thumb, that you realise something. These midnight gatherings are more than stolen snacks. They're bridges, between prayer and appetite, between solitude and solidarity, between the body and the spirit. The nuns may wake at midnight to chant psalms, but some also wake to share a crust of bread with a friend, to sip warm milk by firelight, and to remember that they are human too. Gertrude finishes her drink with a sigh. Go back to bed, she says, standing slowly. The dough won't shape itself in the morning. Bruna groans, but obeys. You help rinse the cups in the basin. Just a splash of cool water, a quiet clink of ceramic, a folded cloth to dry them. No one speaks. You slip back to your cot, hands still faintly sticky with honey and almond. Your breath smells like cinnamon and dreams. The stone is cool beneath your feet. Your blanket scratchy but welcoming. You curl beneath it like a cat and close your eyes. You'll rise again in a few hours, shape dough, stamp loaves, sip broth and sweep herbs and listen for the rhythm of bells. But for now, you let the posset do its work. Sleep settles like warm dough under a linen cloth. And somewhere, not far away, the fire purrs quietly in its hearth, guarding your dreams. You dream of St. Honorius, not the way you'd expect, not on a glowing cloud or hurling bolts of divine yeast at sinners. No, in your dream he's shorter than you imagined, balding with a crooked smile and a robe streaked in flour. He's standing in a dusty kitchen surrounded by laughter and chaos, waving a spoon like a scepter and declaring, "Let the crust crack where it pleases." You wake smiling, the memory already fading like steam from a cooling loaf. By the time you make it back to the bakery, Sister Alwina is already there, apron tied, sleeves rolled, and muttering something about lazy saints who don't help with the cleanup. She's elbow deep in flour, and she doesn't even glance up when she says, "You slept through Lord's." You start to apologise. "Good," she interrupts. "We need you alert for St. Bread." St. Bread. She points to a pile of cracked walnuts, dried cherries, fennel seed, and crushed barley. "It's his feast day," she says. "Honorius, patron of bakers." She raises an eyebrow. "You dream of him?" You blink. "I think so," she snorts. "He owes me a new oven." Today's loaf is different, richer, darker, almost cake-like. It's made with soaked grains, dried fruit, honey, and a splash of weak beer. "For flavour," Alwina claims, though you suspect it's also because it was left over from Sister Bruna's failed attempt at monastic ale spritzers. As you mix the dough, she tells you the legend. St. Honorius was, according to some dusty records and enthusiastic oral traditions, a bishop who once blessed a baker's oven, and it never scorched bread again. One version claims he multiplied loaves in a famine. Another insists he personally punched the devil out of a lump of rye. That last one, Alwina says, was Sister Gertrude's invention, but we liked it, so we kept it. You knead the dough slowly. It's stickier than usual, the cherries resisting incorporation like little rebels. The fennel seeds crackle faintly between your palms. You're told to fold, not stretch. Let it breathe. Don't bully it. You nod like you understand. You don't. Quirky tidbit. Some monasteries made special feast day loaves shaped like the saint's traditional attributes. Honorius's symbol, a bishop's mitre, which unfortunately looks a bit like an upturned sock puppet in dough form. "We do sunbursts instead," Alwina mutters. Less embarrassing. The first rise takes forever, or maybe time's just slowed down again, warped by the scent of toasting walnuts and the quiet tick of bees on the other side of the garden wall. While it rests, Sister Bruna appears, dragging a wooden crate of what she calls the Honorius offerings. It includes a small statue of the saint, a sprig of dried wheat, and a loaf from last year, now preserved into something that would probably shatter glass. "We keep it as a warning," she grins. You help shape the risen dough into 3 large rounds, each embedded with extra fruit and glazed with egg and honey. The stamp today is a stylized flame, symbolic of both the Holy Spirit and, depending on the abbey's mood, a well-stoked oven. They go in, you wait. While the loaves bake, the sisters prepare for the celebration, if you can call it that. There's no dancing, no feasting, just a few extra candles lit in the chapel and permission for one slightly longer nap in the afternoon. But the bread is the event. It emerges dark and golden, crusted with sugar and fragrant enough to draw even the most stoic of nuns to the kitchen door with the practiced nonchalance of people pretending not to beg. You cut the first loaf. It's warm, dense, rich. Each bite is a tapestry. Nut, fruit, spice, soft steam that clings to your tongue. You carry the first slices on a linen-covered tray to the cloister's centre, where the statue of Saint Honorius sits. Alwina lights a small votive candle and nods. He's fed us. Again. You leave a slice for him, another for the abbey cat. The rest? Shared in slow silence as the sisters sit around the fountain, letting the late morning sun warm their shoulders and their crusts. Historians still argue whether these saint feasts were true celebrations or just practical excuses to use up pantry leftovers. In truth, they were both. Saints gave names to the rhythms already lived, the changing seasons, the shifting grains, the hunger and the joy. Later you find yourself back at the bench writing in the oven log. Loaves rose well. Saint visited in dreams. Bruna claims he winked at her. You close the book and sit for a moment, watching the breeze ripple through the herb garden. You wonder if other people dream of saints, or if you only do because you've spent a week inhaling flour and honey and thyme, and maybe that does something to your brain. You breathe deep. Somewhere in the next room, Sister Gertrude begins humming that bread lullaby again, soft and low, and you realise with a quiet smile you're already dreaming. This morning things are different. There's tension in the air, not disaster level, No overturned honey pots or collapsing ovens, but a subtle shift in the routine. The sisters move faster, conversations are clipped. The scent of fresh thyme is replaced by something more practical. Turnips. Alwina pulls you aside near the garden gate. It's a lean season, she says quietly. We'll need to stretch what we have. Stretch what we have. You glance at the bakery table. No honey pots, no fragrant spice jars. Just a few bowls of rough flour, wilted greens, a jug of well water, and a pile of turnips that look like they've seen better centuries. Welcome to the austere side of convent baking. Today you're making fasting bread. Not by choice, but necessity. No honey, no fruit, no nuts. Just basics. And substitutions. Flour, of course, though not the fine, golden kind. This is coarse, dark, stone-ground barley meal. And sour-smelling and grumpy. There's a small bowl of mashed turnip, slightly bitter, pale like ghost paste, and a bundle of dried nettles, which Alwina informs you are for bite. You're sceptical. She nods toward the table. We've done this before, during wartime, drought, plague, a bishop with a sweet tooth and tight purse strings. You adapt, or you chew air. You get to work. The dough is sticky and heavy. It clings like guilt and breaks apart without warning. You try adding more water. Alwina tuts. Let it find its shape. Don't force it. She adds a pinch of ground fennel, not for flavour, but to trick the tongue. It helps, slightly. Quirky tidbit. During strict fasting seasons like Lent, some abbeys banned honey and even yeast from bread making. Nuns would turn to root vegetables, wild herbs, or even crushed chestnuts to give the dough texture. One record from 1274 mentions acorn paste loaf, a noble attempt that reportedly tasted like chewed bark. You fold nettle into the dough carefully, trying not to sting yourself. You fail, twice. But the dough comes together at last, rough and grey-green, like something a forest might cough up. You shape it into rounds, less hopeful this time, and score them with a plain X. No symbols today, Alwina says. This bread speaks for itself. As it bakes, the scent is earthy, less inviting, more humble, but not unpleasant. It smells like effort, like survival. You and Alwina sit near the oven in silence. The usual kitchen chatter has been replaced with a kind of meditative quiet. You're both thinking the same thing. This isn't feast day bread, but it's honest. When the loaves emerge, they're dense and flat. The crust is firm, not crisp, no sheen of honey, no sugared herbs, just plain hot bread. You let them cool and prepare for delivery. Today's loaves aren't for the sisters, they're for the poor. Once a month, more often during times of scarcity, the convent distributes extra bread to those who come knocking. There's no ceremony, no fanfare, just quiet hands passing humble food to quieter mouths. You wrap the loaves in cloth, placing them gently into a wooden basket. Bruna joins you at the gate with a sack of dried beans and a jar of salt. We give what we have, she says, even if what we have is turnip mash and optimism. You walk together to the edge of the village, where a small group of locals waits patiently near the abbey's outer wall. Old men, young mothers, barefoot children with wide eyes. No one speaks much, but their hands, when they reach for the bread, tremble slightly with gratitude. You pass out the loaves, one to a woman with grey hair and a bundle of wool, another to a man missing 2 fingers, a third to a girl who clutches the loaf like it might disappear. You offer them smiles, they offer you nods, no one complains. Alwina once told you, fasting bread is not punishment, it's practice. A reminder that flavour is a luxury, but nourishment is mercy. You get it now. Historians still argue whether monastic fasting breads were meant as moral exercises or sheer resourcefulness. Some say it was self-discipline, others a clever way to keep the abbey's pantry from vanishing during lean seasons. As always, the answer lives somewhere between intention and necessity. Back at the convent, you sit on the steps of the herb garden, the sun warming your back, a spare slice of nettle turnip loaf in your hand. You bite. It's dense, chewy. The fennel hits first, then a quiet bitterness from the greens. It isn't delicious, but it is good. It stays with you. Bruna joins you with a mug of water and says, "We've made worse." You nod. She takes a bite of her own slice and adds, "Once, during the flood, we made bread with mashed beans, onion scraps, and what might have been moss." You blink. "Moss?" She shrugs. "Tasted like holy regret." You both laugh, and then you chew in silence. Because even here, in the middle of scarcity with no sugar, no spice, and nettle stings still tingling in your palms, You feel full. The kind of full that only comes from sharing what little you have and knowing it was enough. There's a hum in the air this morning, not from bees or the oven, or even the sisters' distant chanting. It's coming from a drawer. To be precise, a very old, slightly jammed drawer in the back corner of the bakery, half hidden behind sacks of barley and a box labelled simply, "Past experiments do not eat." You wouldn't have found it if you weren't rearranging the flour bins, trying to impress Sister Alwina with your sudden zeal for storage. But there it is, carved with a faded star and sticking out just enough to be suspicious. You tug. It groans open like a tired door. Inside, parchment, cracked, curled and dustier than a monk's bookshelf, it's tied in a bundle with a faded red ribbon. You carry it to the light, fingers trembling slightly. Alwina is busy mixing dough and doesn't notice you sneaking it onto the counter. You untie it carefully. One sheet unfolds with a little puff of dust, and there in shaky brown ink is something remarkable. A recipe. Old. Very old. In Latin, half-faded French, and a splash of what you think might be personal commentary in marginal scribbles. The top reads, Panis Amoris, bread of love, and just below that, in surprisingly elegant lettering, to be baked only with joy and only when one's hands are warm. You blink. The script is delicate, looped with flourishes. Near the corner is a tiny drawing of a bee and, of all things, a heart with a little arrow through it. Nuns don't usually doodle love notes into their bread recipes. Who wrote this? You ask aloud. Bruna appears behind you like a conjured thought. Sister Domitilla, she says. Long ago. Was she allowed to bake this? Bruna smirks. She was a romantic, in theory. The recipe is unusual. Honey, yes, but also rosewater, crushed almonds, a splash of cider vinegar, and a note scrawled in a margin. Don't skip the saffron, even if it's frowned upon. You read it 3 times. It's clear this wasn't just sustenance. It was affection turned edible. The kind of thing you'd bake not for obligation, but for someone you hoped might smile. Alwina sighs from across the room. If you're going to try it, do it right. You gather the ingredients, carefully. The almonds are crushed by hand, the rosewater measured by drops. The saffron, threaded in gold like tiny sunbeams, is steeped in warm milk until the colour deepens like sunrise. The dough, when you bring it together, feels different, softer, lighter, almost bashful. You knead it gently, aware that someone once did this while thinking of someone else. Maybe not romantically, this was a convent after all, but fondly. Devotion comes in many forms. Quirky tidbit. Some monastic loaves were baked not just for feast days but as quiet gifts, tokens passed between abbeys, tributes to visitors, or personal notes baked into the crust. A swirl here, a clove tucked there. Medieval baking had more inside jokes than you'd think. You shape the dough into a simple round, then press a flower pattern into the top with a carved stamp shaped like ivy leaves. You glaze it with saffron milk and place it near the hearth to rise. It smells faintly floral, bright, playful. Alwina doesn't smile exactly, but she does mutter something that might be approval and hands you a sliver of quince paste. Use that when it's done, the sister would have. Historians still argue whether such deeply personal recipes were kept in secret, or quietly passed along to novices ready to learn more than just flour ratios. Some suggest these affection loaves were coded expressions, small rebellions in crust and crumb. The oven accepts your loaf without drama. You watch it through the door, rising slowly, the top cracking just slightly to reveal a golden streak from the saffron glaze. When you pull it out, the scent is ridiculous, in the best way. It's rose and almond, warmth and sugar, summer and memory. You feel like you're baking something that doesn't just fill the belly, it wraps around the heart and whispers, "Remember me." You let it cool, then you slice it carefully and brush the inside with a smear of quince paste. You serve it with tea. Yes, the sisters have tea, from a hidden stash. Bruna smuggles it out from a cupboard marked garden tools. You sit together at the side table in the herb room, the light warm, the bread warm, your hands still faintly sticky with syrup and sentiment. The first bite is soft, subtly sweet. The rose is delicate, not perfumed. The almond adds depths. And the saffron, it's like eating a whisper of joy. Bruna leans back, licking her fingers. Domitilla would have liked you. You smile. She seems like trouble. She was, but her loaves were always forgiven. You think about that as you chew. Maybe forgiveness, like affection, is sometimes better baked than spoken. You tuck the recipe back into the drawer, but not before copying it carefully into the oven log. Right below today's entry, panis amoris, baked with joy, served with laughter, no regrets. The bread cools, the room glows, and somewhere, just maybe, Sister Domitilla smiles. You've just finished sweeping crumbs from the baking bench when the door creaks open, and a gust of chatter rolls in like a summer wind. It's not Sister Bruna this time, though she's close behind. It's two monks from the neighbouring monastery, robes dusted with the unmistakable grime of a long walk, and faces already angled toward the bread rack like wolves trying to act polite. They've come to trade. Apparently this happens more often than you realised. A low-key exchange system between the convent and the monastery. Beer for bread, garden tools for beeswax, rumours for rhubarb, all bartered over a handshake and the occasional wink. Sister Alwina doesn't stop kneading her dough. She jerks her chin toward you. Show them the loaves. You blink. Me? Bruna grins. You've got the hands now. You're one of us. That might be the highest honour you've received all week. So you approach the table with all the dignity you can muster, lifting the linen cloth from the rack to reveal 6 honey loaves. They're still warm, their crusts golden and stamped with the braided vine pattern you practiced yesterday. The monks whistle, audibly. One mutters, "Blessed be the yeast," and the other elbows him. You wrap 2 loaves in cloth and pass them over. In return, they hand you 2 corked bottles of dark beer. Heavy, rich, made from barley and herbs you probably stepped on yesterday. Their beer is better than our posset, Bruna whispers, snatching one for safekeeping. You sit at the side bench and share slices with the visitors, sipping small cups of the beer, strictly for tasting, according to Gertrude, though her pour is suspiciously generous. As the bread disappears, so do the walls between cloister and monastery. The monks tell stories. One recounts a night when their oven caught fire and a passing goat saved the day by braying so loud it woke the entire dormitory. Another claims a brother once tried to bake with crushed pine cones. Unleavened disaster, he calls it. You counter with the nettle turnip loaf saga. Bruna doubles down by swearing Sister Alwina once added crushed chalk by accident. Alwina from the kneading board growls, "That was limestone flour, and it worked." Quirky tidbit? Monasteries and convents often engaged in quiet culinary diplomacy. Recipes were shared, or stolen, ingredients borrowed. Certain abbeys became known for specific loaves, and some tried to outdo each other, creating miracle breads they claimed could cure fatigue or encourage visions during prayer. In reality, they just used more honey and slightly less humility. Historians still argue whether these exchanges were encouraged or quietly tolerated. Some orders insisted on strict separation of genders. Others, well, let's just say they liked their bread and their banter. By late afternoon, the monks take their leave with loaves under arms and crumbs in their beards. Bruna gives them a wave. You're given the job of writing down the exchange in the convent's bread ledger, a dusty book with entries like 3 herb stamped rounds for 2 bottles stout, 1 cracked bell, and gossip regarding Abbott's new sandals. It feels like history, in the weirdest, most beautiful way. That evening you sit with Sister Gertrude near the garden wall. She's trimming lavender sprigs. You're munching on the corner of a leftover crust. She nods toward the cloister gate. "Funny thing about bread," she says. "It breaks barriers, walls, rules sometimes." You ask her if that's why the convent bakes so much. She shrugs. "Because it works." She hands you a small wrapped bundle. Inside is a single round loaf, sweet-smelling, glazed, marked with a dove. "Take it to the monastery tomorrow." Their cook lost her voice. This'll say what she can't. You cradle the loaf in your lap. It's warm, soft, almost breathing. "Don't eat it on the way," Gertrude adds, "or I'll make you bake 10 more. You sit there in the twilight, the convent quieting around you, the bell tower casting a long shadow across the garden. You realise that while bread has always been food, it's also language. It speaks peace when voices fail, friendship when hands are full, comfort when days are long and flour is short. You trace the dove with your finger and feel it press back, not in movement, but in meaning. And somewhere in the bakery behind you, the next batch is already rising. The bishop is coming. You don't need a formal announcement to know this. The atmosphere shifts faster than a dough left too close to the hearth. The entire abbey suddenly hums with a nervous, purposeful energy. Brooms are wielded like weapons, linens are swapped for the good linens, and someone has actually polished the doorknobs, which is impressive, given that most of them are wood. You ask Bruna how often bishops visit. Not often, she says, but often enough that we remember where we hid the nice ladle. Sister Alwina is in full command mode, moving through the kitchen with the focus of a woman preparing for either a feast or a siege, likely both. We'll need the honey bread, she says, the good one. You soon learn that the good one is no ordinary loaf. It's the convent's showstopper, a honey bread baked only for high occasions and visiting dignitaries. It has a name, panis benedictus, literally blessed bread. You help prepare the ingredients. There's flour, of course, fine and sifted 3 times. The good honey, gathered from the oldest hives, crushed anise seed, cloves, dried orange peel, and chopped dates soaked overnight in apple cider. It's more dessert than sustenance, and smells like something a wealthy merchant might dream about. The kicker, it's braided into a circle, a crown really. You knead the dough alongside Bruna, the two of you humming quietly as you fold in the spices and fruit. It feels heavier than usual, ambitious, the kind of loaf that would wear a silk robe and demand compliments. While the dough rests, Alwina inspects every inch of the bakery. She even dusts behind the herb jars. You suspect she's checking for ghosts. Quirky tidbit. Some convents reserved their finest loaves for bishops not out of reverence, but strategic hospitality. A well-fed bishop was more likely to approve land requests, overlook minor transgressions, and maybe, just maybe, turn a blind eye to the occasional accidental wine overspill in the cellar. Historians still argue whether these breads were acts of faith or clever politics. One chronicler noted that a particularly exquisite loaf once led to the expansion of an abbey's vineyard. Coincidence? Alwina doesn't think so. Back to your bread. The dough has risen perfectly, soft, plush, and fragrant. You braid it carefully into the crown shape, nestling the ends together like an edible halo. Alwina brushes it with an egg honey wash and sprinkles crushed rose petals around the top. Then comes the final touch, a single almond pressed into the centre. For luck, she says, or charm, depending on the bishop. The oven is already hot, stoked since dawn and steady as ever. You place the loaf inside and sit in front of the hearth, watching its golden crust take shape. It rises with dignity, splitting slightly along the braids. When it's done, the scent is almost overwhelming, like a festival crammed into a single loaf. And then the bishop arrives. There's no trumpet, no procession, just the quiet creak of the main gate and the distinct sound of fancy boots on the stone floor. You catch a glimpse. A tall man in fine robes, well-fed, soft-spoken, with a face that says, I could be judging you right now, or I could just be thinking about lunch. He's welcomed with a bow and a bench and a linen cloth laid before him like an altar. Then comes the bread. You carry it yourself, hands steady, heart racing slightly. It's still warm, glowing faintly under its glaze, the rose petals baked just enough to deepen in colour. The bishop leans forward as you set it down. You step back. He breaks it. The crust crackles, the steam rises. He inhales deeply. You see the smallest, slowest smile. He takes a bite and closes his eyes. You glance at Alwina, who stands nearby, arms folded. She nods once, not to you, to the bread. It passed the test. Later, you're told he asked for a second slice. Unheard of. 2 slices from a bishop is the equivalent of a standing ovation. After he leaves, with the rest of the loaf carefully wrapped and tucked under his arm, you help clean the table. Bruna whispers, We're getting that new flour mill, I bet. You laugh, but deep down you realise something profound. This wasn't just about impressing a bishop. This bread, the panis benedictus, is a living expression of who these women are, devoted, precise, creative, steeped in tradition but unafraid of a little rosewater. It's not about grandeur, it's about meaning. And if that meaning happens to be delicious, all the better. That night, you copy the day's events into the oven log. Panis benedictus, braided, blessed, bitten by a bishop, request for recipe pending. And somewhere under the moonlight, the last crumbs of that crown loaf soften into silence. The bells begin before dawn. Not the usual soft toll of matins, but something more energetic, insistent even. You stir under your thin blanket, half dreaming of bread loaves shaped like dragons and butter that sings hymns. Then you hear the unmistakable scurry of sandals in the hallway and the clang of the big mixing bowl falling off the bakery shelf. You're out of bed in a flash. It's feast day. Sister Bruna meets you at the door, wild-eyed and already smudged with flour. "It's St. Bridget's Day," she says breathlessly, "and we're behind." Behind? You follow her into the bakery, where it looks like someone opened a medieval bakery theme park and forgot to install brakes. Herbs hang from every beam. The oven glows like a beast awakened too early. Every surface is covered with dough, bowls, baskets, or frantic nuns. Alwina is at the centre of it all, orchestrating chaos with terrifying grace. "Find your apron," she says. "We have 200 loaves to bake." You blink. 200? She tosses you a linen bundle. "Welcome to feast day." Feast days are no joke. They're the Abbey's most extravagant liturgical celebrations, honouring saints, blessings, and, let's be honest, the sheer joy of flour, fire, and the occasional edible unicorn. Yes, unicorn. But more on that in a minute. Your first task, dough prep. Not just one batch, but 5. Honeyed, spiced, seeded, plain, and something Bruna calls miracle loaf. A vague category that seems to change every year based on what's available and what rumours are swirling about the nearest relic site. You start mixing, arms aching before you're even halfway through. This isn't gentle, reflective kneading. This is industrial-level devotion, elbow deep in dough that pushes back and clings to your soul like a glutened prayer. While the dough rises, you join a decorating crew in the courtyard. Loaves for St. Bridget's Day aren't just tasty, they're symbolic. Each shape tells a story. There's the dove loaf, round and feather-light, stamped with a single wing. The fish braid, made from 3 interwoven strands, each one filled with herbs. The cross-crust round, with a hollowed centre for holding a sprig of rosemary. And then, of course, the unicorn horn. It's a cone-shaped spiral of sweet dough, glazed in honey and topped with crushed violet petals and, if available, a single clove in the tip for protection. Bruna explains that St. Bridget was associated with animals and miracles, and someone at some point made a loaf that vaguely resembled a unicorn, and now it's tradition. Quirky tidbit. Medieval convents often embraced feast day whimsy with zeal. Loaves shaped like suns, birds, or even castles have been documented. One nunnery reportedly attempted an entire nativity scene in bread, complete with edible manger. The baby Jesus reportedly had raisins for eyes. Historians still argue whether these festive shapes were meant to teach religious symbolism or simply keep everyone from going bonkers with routine. Some suggest a little of both, education with a sprinkle of joy. Back in the bakery, the heat is relentless. Loaves come out of the oven faster than they can be cooled. The air smells of spice, flour, and celebration. The sisters move in choreographed chaos, flipping loaves, brushing glaze, arranging baskets. You catch Gertrude delicately arranging a row of fish braids, singing something that sounds like a hymn but might be a drinking song. You don't ask. Alwina inspects each batch like a general reviewing troops. More colour on that dove, less crunch on that horn. Who used the old honey? You blush. You've never seen so much bread in one room. Loaves piled high like walls, trays balanced on every surface, even the windowsills are lined with cooling unicorns. And yet no one slows down. There's joy in the movement, laughter beneath the sweat, a deep, collective rhythm that carries you from task to task without overthinking. As the sun reaches its peak, the doors open. Villagers arrive, some invited, some just knowing. A few monks from the neighbouring abbey show up with empty satchels and wide smiles. Children giggle as they're handed horn loaves. Elders bow in thanks for the rosemary rounds. Each person leaves with bread. Not one is turned away. You're stationed at the basket table, handing out fish braids and saying things like, "Blessings of Bridget upon you," in your best serious voice. Bruna whispers jokes in your ear between loaves. Gertrude slips a horn into your pocket for emergency snacks. The courtyard fills with the scent of baking and the murmur of shared joy. Sisters hum hymns, children play with crusts, a dog sneaks a loaf and runs, and no one minds. The final basket goes out just before Vespers. You collapse on the bakery bench, hands sticky, hair dusted with flour, arms tingling from overwork. You look around. Loaves gone. Hearts full. Sister Alwina sits beside you with a small plate. 2 thin slices of miracle loaf, drizzled with honey, dusted with cinnamon. You eat in silence. She finally speaks. Bridget believed in miracles, so do I, especially when I have 10 helpers and no one burns the rosemary. You laugh, crumbs flying. And then you write in the oven log, feast day, 200 loaves, 0 regrets, 1 unicorn nearly escaped. And beneath it, in tiny script, you add, panis mirabilis, bread of wonder. Because that's exactly what today was. The day after the feast feels like a shared hangover, minus the wine, plus a lot more sweeping. The courtyard is quieter now. No baskets of loaves, no wild laughter, no children chasing horn-shaped bread down the cloister path. Just a few birds pecking at crumbs and the echo of yesterday's joy settling into the stones. You expect a slow morning, but Sister Alwina greets you with a broom and a bucket. Time to take stock, she says. Loaves are gone, flour is low, and the ledger needs updating. You've come to learn this is her version of rest. The flour room is your first stop. You count the sacks, 3 full, 2 half empty, 1 suspiciously chewed through by mice, who clearly share your taste in carbs. Bruna mutters something about deploying the cat battalion and disappears with purpose. Then comes the honey inventory. 2 large pots remain, 1 still sealed, the other partially full and crystallized around the edges. Sister Kalia gently warms it over the hearth while you stir, careful not to scorch the precious gold. It lasts forever, she says, like grace, or gossip. You laugh. Not at the joke, but because it's true. This place runs on stories just as much as it does on flour. As the storerooms are counted and restocked, you help Alwina bring down a thick, leather-bound book from the upper pantry shelf. It's wrapped in oilcloth and smells like cloves and old beeswax. This, she says, is the first book. Not the Bible. The bread book. It's older than most of the sisters, bound by hand, pages thick with flour dust, ink faded to brown but legible. It's part recipe journal, part prayer diary, part personal history. You open it carefully, and there they are. Centuries of notes, drawings of loaf shapes, stamped symbols, names you don't recognize written in loops and slants, Sister Hedwig, Sister Sabina. 1 page signed simply, a very tired nun. You turn another page. A pressed flower falls out, lavender, still fragrant after all these years. You look to Alwina. Do we add to it? She nods. Only when the bread teaches us something new. You flip to the back. A blank page waits. You think of the nettle bread, the midnight posset, the horn loaves and unicorn chaos, the silent dinners, the bishop's smile, and slowly you write. Some loaves rise in joy, others in need, all carry us. You date it. No signature, just the bread. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval convents maintained baking books like this one, but kept them under lock and key, not for secrecy, at least not officially, but because they were considered as spiritually valuable as relics. In one case, a stolen gingerbread recipe led to a 3-year Cold War between 2 abbeys. Historians still argue whether such records were treated as cookbooks or chronicles. The answer, as usual, is yes. You tuck the book away and help Alwina sweep the final flour from the pantry floor. The scent of yesterday's feast lingers. Rosemary, saffron, heat. Later, in the herb room, you help prepare sachets of mint and yarrow to tuck into the fresh flour sacks. Keeps the weevils out, Gertrude explains. Also smells like victory. You tie each with twine, scribble a date on a little tag and stack them neatly. Another quiet ritual, another part of the rhythm. Outside, the bees return to their work. The garden hums. The oven is cool today, resting like the sisters. But in the corner, a small bowl of fresh starter bubbles gently, just enough to remind you. We begin again. Before bed, you wander back to the baking room. It's empty now, quiet, but not still. You see it in the scattered flour prints on the table, the faint smell of yeast in the air, a single cracked clove lying beside the stone mortar. You sit for a moment, cradling a fresh cloth, newly embroidered with a tiny crooked loaf and your initials. Bruna's gift. You didn't even know she knew how to stitch. You fold it gently and place it in the drawer beside the stamps. A promise. You'll be back, because the legacy of this place isn't just in the loaves. It's in the laughter stirred into dough, the prayers whispered while grinding flour, the love pressed into every stamp, and the stories, written in crumb, crust and fading ink, passed on by hands dusted in gold. You wake before the bells today. No sandals in the hallway, no clattering bowls, just soft light edging through the high window, painting a thin stripe of silver across the floor. Something draws you to the bakery one last time. You pad down the stone corridor in silence, past the herb room, the cloister garden, the bench where you first learned to knead. Every turn feels familiar now, every crack in the wall, every creaky step in the floor. Inside, the oven sits cold but dignified. The flour bin is half full. A clean apron hangs beside the door, folded with care. Someone left it there for you. Sister Alwina is already waiting. She doesn't speak, she doesn't need to. She hands you a bowl of water and a sack of flour, and together you begin again. This loaf is yours. No feast, no bishop, no fasting. Just you and the dough. And the rhythm you've learned by heart. You measure by feel. A handful here, a trickle of water there, a splash of honey, one of the last spoonfuls from the old pot, a pinch of lavender, a whisper of clove. You stir, knead, breathe. The dough is soft and warm beneath your hands. It rises slowly like it remembers you, like it's been waiting. You shape it into a round, press your favourite stamp, a tiny sunburst surrounded by vines, into the top. Brush it with rosemary water, let it rest. The oven's warmth creeps in as the fire grows. The loaf goes in, and while it bakes, the sisters come by one, Gertrude with her lavender tea, Bruna with a smirk and a wink, Kalia, humming quietly. Even the abbess steps in, says nothing, just nods once. No one disturbs the bread. They just sit, like it's a small liturgy, a farewell in crust and flame. When it's ready, you take it out with your own hands. It's perfect. Golden. Cracked just slightly. The sunburst deep and proud. Burst. You carry it to the garden wall, tear it slowly, and eat. Not because you're hungry, but because the bread is more than food now. It's memory, love, place, a slow ritual of presence. And as you finish the last bite, the breeze stirs the herbs, the bees rise, the bell tolls, you smile. Because you know this place will go on. Loaves will rise, bees will hum, Bruna will definitely misbehave, and someone, someday, will read your notes in the bread ledger and wonder who you were. You leave your apron folded neatly on the bench, your stamp tucked beside Domitilla's recipe. And as you walk through the cloister for the last time, you do so with the warm weight of the morning loaf still in your belly. And peace, golden, slow, and soft, rising in your chest. Now, let it all slow down. Feel the warmth of the bakery begin to fade gently, like the last glow of coals under soft ash. Let your hands relax. There's no more flour to sift tonight. No more honey to drizzle. Just you and the comfort of stillness. Breathe in, slowly. Imagine the scent of baked bread lingering in the air, sweet, with just a hint of spice, a little lavender, maybe rosemary. Let it swirl around you like steam rising from a fresh loaf. The garden outside is quiet now. The bees are tucked into their hives. The rosemary has stopped swaying. Even the old oven has gone to sleep, its mouth closed, its belly resting. You sit by the window, in your mind. The stone is cool beneath you. The stars have come out, faint and flickering above the orchard. You can hear the distant sound of the fountain. You can feel your breath slowing. There's nothing left to do, nothing left to make. The bread is baked, the story's told, the tools cleaned and set aside. Let your thoughts rise slowly, gently, and drift like flour through sunlight. You're safe here, warm, fed, remembered. So rest now. Let your body soften. Let the quiet hold you. And if you dream tonight, maybe you'll find yourself in the bakery once more, kneading love into dough, stamping stories into crust, and waking in a world that smells faintly of honey and peace. Clee 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 of honey and peace.